If you own a business, you face many challenges. That you know. What you may not know is how to think about solving them. That's today's conversation. Join us. I'm really excited for today's episode. We're talking with business coach and owner of the alternative board, Jersey Shore North, John Mousseau. A brief word about John. He brings more than 25 years of experience specializing in marketing and operations. His diverse background includes working for Fortune 500 companies like Kraft and CBS, as well as startups. Since 2014, he's been the owner of The Moose Consulting, a marketing and operations consultancy firm focusing on helping small and mid-sized businesses to grow. Before The Moose Consulting, John spent 10 years at global marketing agency MKTG, where he was executive vice president and general manager of their Midwest division. He oversaw general management, operations, P&L, business development, and client relations. He has a bachelor's degree in business administration from Hartwick College and a master's of business administration from Northeastern University. He's Strat Pro certified to help businesses of all sizes establish the right vision for their organization, align their teams around a plan to achieve that vision, and successfully execute that plan. I think today's episode will appeal to many small business owners of all sizes, and I hope that you agree.
Welcome to another episode of Millstone River Live, a podcast brought to you by Millstone River Wealth Management.
Thanks, John, for doing this with us today. I think it's a great topic, and many people could potentially benefit from the wisdom that you're about to share. You know, we're talking about issues and challenges that are common among business owners, almost regardless of what industry that they're in. And maybe you could kick us off and, let us know sort of what's one of the most common things, call it a challenge or an issue or something that business owners of any industry might face that you see frequently in your day-to-day.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me here. One of the first things I see very common is that many business owners don't have a clear vision of what they want in their business. Your vision is like your roadmap of the future, and if you don't know what you want, and more importantly, haven't written it down, the odds of it happening are slim. So it's really important that one of the things I do as a coach is one of the first things I do when I'm meeting with a new client is I work with them on what is your personal vision and what is your company vision. And number one, I make sure that your vision is what you pick a time period in the future, and what is your life like, or what is your business like over that period of time, and you write it in the present tense like it is happening. And that's one of the, if you don't have a roadmap where you're going to go, you heard this, any road, you take any road to get there. And a lot of business owners are, they're kind of winging it as they go along without a real plan. And that's the first step to a plan is really defining what your vision is.
And I would suspect that not only would this be a common thing that you see, but also maybe a difficult one for people to figure out.
Yes, it's hard because some people do know what they want and they have in their head, they just have it written down, but most aren't really sure of what they want. So we have, I have some tools and exercises that we work on to help them kind of figure out what they want, because I think your point is a good one. Some people don't know, and my job is to help them better figure that out and at least pick a path. Because you got we need a roadmap of where we're going, and if they don't know where they want, if they don't know where they want to go, it just makes their job as a business owner even harder. Because what are you planning for? You're planning to exit the business at some point. Okay, when? Because you'll do things differently in the business if you understand what the path is, and also when you do, we do annual planning with all of our clients, and not understanding what their long-term goals are is a big challenge for me as coach. So it's something. That's why it's the first thing that we do. And sometimes with some folks, it takes longer than others to do it. But until we have that, it's really the stepping stone for everything else.
Right. So the business owner that has developed now, I mean, you might have to pull it out of them just about, but the business owner who has developed that vision personally and professionally probably will change the way that they do certain things, right? So they might do things differently than they were before because now they're kind of looking at this from a long game perspective, and maybe I've been doing this one particular thing incorrectly or not as well as I could be. Do you see that?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, when I talk to a lot of business owners, depending on what stage they are, particularly if they're in the kind of later stages of their business career, one of my first questions is, what's your exit plan? And some of them haven't really thought about it. And then I'll say, I will ask, well, do you need to sell the business to retire? And many times the answer is they need the proceeds from the business to sell. So knowing they want to build an asset that they want to sell, how they approach that asset is a lot different than if they're never planning to sell it. Many times business owners are all there, it actually goes to the next challenge I see. They're over-reliant. The business is over-reliant on them. And you're not going to sell a business when the owner is, the business is them. The owner goes away, the business goes away. So that's, understanding that if they do eventually want to get out, everybody's going to exit the business. It's a matter of if they do it voluntarily or not.
Right.
And, as you get older, health comes in the way. So if you don't have a plan for how you want to exit, in this day and age, this time frame, there are so many baby boomers have not prepared to exit their business, and most of those businesses just go away because they're not nearly enough buyers as there are sellers. So a business owner, quite honestly, can be a step ahead of their competition by having a plan of how they want to exit the business. It makes, and you know this, Matt, with your job, it makes sense for them from a personal financial standpoint as well as from a professional, business standpoint. So.
Absolutely. We have a lot of clients who are business owners, mostly smaller businesses, and in a small company, the owner is the crux. That's the person who makes everything happen. But your point is, it's not the reliance on the owner, it's the over-reliance in which it makes it difficult for them to exit at some point, or at least exit in the way that they would prefer to. And then I know what we see is, sometimes somebody, they work really hard. They put in lots of hours, and it's the old blood, sweat, and tears thing to get the company going. And then at some point, they make a decision that they've attained a certain level of success, and they want to slow down a little or enjoy other things in life a little bit. And they simply cannot because the business can't function in their absence, even to take off a few days or something like that. So that makes perfect sense to me.
That is very, 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 very common. With a lot of my clients, many of them over the years have, they've set goals for themselves that they're going to take a week or a 2-week vacation and have very little communication with the office. And many of them, when I first met them, they could not do that. Most can do it now. Some still have a lot of work, have a lot of work to do that. But a lot of it is developing the systems and processes that you need, to run the business, and writing them down and having the team that you trust to help run the business when you're not there. That's another, challenge that I see all the time is many business owners they really don't have a second in command, and many of them take too long. When you're early on in a business, or even early on, but like many business owners, there comes a point in their business life where they have to take a chance on themselves.
Right.
And one of them is hiring somebody to help them run the business. And many of them, I get it. They're like, you know what, I can't afford it. But I tell all my clients that at some point you're going to have to take a chance on yourself. And you have to, whether it's making an investment in marketing or something else you want to make, or hiring a second in command, it's more money than you want to pay. But the worst case scenario is it doesn't work out and you let the person go. Best case scenario is you found a way to grow the business and not totally relying on you. But many of them are really they hesitate on taking that chance on themselves, and it only hurts themselves. So that's the challenge I see all the time.
And I know, as someone who is himself guilty of exactly what you just described, it's tough because when you first begin, day one, you can't think about having a second command. You just, you're the only person involved in command and otherwise. And so at some point you start to grow a little bit, perhaps, and then you kind of fall into a trap almost of, well, this is how I've always done it and it's worked for me. So now what you're asking them to do is make a change. And I think that change, right, even though what you're asking them to do is beneficial if done well, but it's change. Change is hard.
Well, it all goes back to what is their vision. If they want to build an asset that they can sell and the business is too reliant on them, they don't ever bring in additional help and support to help them run the business, they're never going to fulfill their vision of selling the business and getting the money from the business to help them retire. So, but you're right, they get stuck in their ways of doing things, and it's funny. I always say business owners are, they're risk takers, but they're really risk managers because there's inherent risk of being a business owner. You know that you're a business owner, but it's how you manage that risk and taking. And I try to talk to them about, if you don't have the faith to take the chance on yourself, I mean, like that, to me, that says a lot right there. And if you don't take that chance, you're going to be in the hamster wheel, going up and down the wheel, whatever, and nothing's ever going to change. So I try to motivate them that, to take that chance, because they do it right, it's going to be the best thing for themselves and their business and their life. I'm not saying it's easy, because it isn't. And many business owners never get the courage to do it.
Yeah, and so
which is
to your earlier point too, right? I mean, absent a vision, it doesn't necessarily appear obvious that that's maybe another step that should be taken. But with that vision, you can kind of say, well, of course I have to do this. I have to bring in a number two, or however
Correct.
that's going to look. Yeah. And it's only really in fulfilling the vision that you created earlier. So that makes perfect sense.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, I always tell all of my clients that whenever they're making a big decision, I ask them, does that get you closer to your vision? The answer is no, then you need to think about whether or not you should do it or not. The answer is yes, then great.
Right, then it's not a question. At that point, it's not a question of if, it's a question of, okay, now how do I do this in the best way possible?
Correct.
Yeah.
But it all starts with having a vision and having it written down. And again, it's really important. You write it down in the present tense like it's happening. You pick a time period in the future, 1, 3, 5, 10 years, whatever time you want to pick. And what is my business like during that time frame? And you write it in the present tense like it's really happening. Not, I hope to be this and hope to blah, blah, blah. No, it is. And it should be inspirational to you and motivating. And that's the goal. Once they take that step, then everything else really kind of falls from there.
So just before we move on, I mean, a close friend of mine who I admire a lot once told me, if you ink it, you'll think it. And I guess that's kind of what you're saying.
Exactly.
So how about investments, area that you see people making investments in their business, maybe another common challenge where those investments are maybe insufficient? What kind of thing do you see?
Well, the
there?
biggest one that in my business, I'm generally dealing with business owners that are, under 10 million annual revenue. So it's on the smaller side. And the majority of them, well, they were undercapitalized to start the business. But one of the big areas where there's a challenge for them is their businesses are successful. They're relying completely on referrals. They're doing no marketing. And referrals are great. You should be getting a lot of referrals. That means you're doing a lot of great service. But referrals, like there's a time when they may go away. And if you don't have any other source of lead generation, i.e. having a brand, number one, which is really important. And particularly for small business owners, a brand can stand out. Whatever business you're in, if you have an actual brand, and it's not just the logo and the look and feel, and that's all part of it, but having a brand can make you be differentiated over your competitors. So then it's just making that investment in lead generation with marketing. And many of them, I have a marketing background, so I'm biased in that I kind of get it. But if you don't know anything about marketing is a challenging thing to try to undertake if you don't get any guidance. And many of my members have, they've tried something and they trusted the person they were talking to, they knew what they were doing, and they didn't. So they paid a lot of money for waste. It's a real big challenge. So I try to help my members as best I can in terms of guiding them in the right place and trying to find good resources for them to use that I've kind of vetted. But it's a huge challenge.
And I would imagine too on that marketing front that marketing itself continually evolves. Right, where people
Correct.
make that investment or how they deploy their marketing effort has changed, and it continues to, and it won't stop changing. So I think that makes it even more challenging if you don't engage the right kind of help and all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's having the mindset to engage, want to help, but then it's just managing that whole process. Again, if you don't know anything about marketing, it's a challenge. I get it. I totally get it. There are times when I've done marketing things and I'm trying to find the right, and I'm like, these people don't know what they're talking about. I can tell, So even someone who knows marketing, it's a challenge. So I really feel for, the members the clients that I have, because I'm trying to find resources to them that I trust, that I know they're going to get, that are going to help them and help them use marketing in a good way to help take their business to the next level. But it's a hard thing.
Yeah, these are good challenges. What's another one that comes to mind in terms of these common issues that?
Well, a big one that I'm sure you know really well is lack of financial literacy. Many business owners don't know how to read a P&L. A balance sheet is even worse. They don't really understand what's on it. I always tell my clients that if you don't know your numbers and understand what's on the P&L, you're the owner. No one else in the company will. Because most of them don't have a CFO or some, finance person. It's really them. So they have to do that as well. And not understanding a P&L is really, and whether you I would tell them, many of them don't even like numbers, and I get it. But you need to be able to understand a P&L because it's the lifeblood of your business, understanding what your numbers are. So I do a lot of tutorials, really basic stuff. What is the P&L? What is the balance sheet? What are all the items? How do they work together? Just having them do their numbers every month, so we can see and talk about it, is really important. So that's a huge one that many business owners are afraid of. And luckily, I can. When I first sign up a new client, one of them, I ask them usually in the second meeting, please send me your P&L and your balance sheet, and I will look at it. And I'm not a CFO or anything, but I know enough to be able to say, what are these things? And I'm trying to gauge their financial literacy. How much do they really know? And luckily, many of them are very forthcoming. Say, I don't really know that much. I need your help, which is great. They're recognized they have a weakness here and they want to get better at it. And that's, but sometimes I come across a new client who doesn't want anything to do with it. And I'm like, well, maybe you're not a good fit because if you're an owner, you need to understand the numbers.
Right.
So
and
that's a huge, and again, I'm sure you've seen that as well in your business.
Well, financial literacy is a big problem because we talk to people about installing retirement plans or other benefits for employees and having money to plan for further expansion or whatever it might be, including things like what you talked about a moment ago, marketing, budgets and stuff like that. I remember one time early on in my career when somebody said, well, if I look at my checkbook and it has a positive number on it, then I know I'm good. And
well, that is the I would bet you when 75% of my members thought cash flow was the amount of money in their checking account.
Right.
So I had to tell them the difference between cash flow and what's in your checking account because they didn't know the difference.
Yeah, and in fairness, I think a lot of people go into business to do something that they're good at or that they like to do, and
Correct.
most of that has nothing to do with understanding
Correct.
the finances of the company, right?
Yeah, they're very good technicians with whatever it is, but not, they haven't really done a lot of training on how to be a business owner. So they're doing a lot of things that are different for them, and that's why that's where I come in, or any coach comes in to really help them, figure out the importance of what you need to do as a business owner, and that leads to the next challenge is many of them are tacticians in a particular thing, and they're operational focused, but they're not strategic focused. They're not, most of my clients, when I started working with them, they did not do any kind of, formal annual planning. They were just really, they weren't setting goals for the year, strategies and tactics. They were just kind of moving along without a plan. And that's one of the first things we introduced really early on is you need to have a plan. And I hear all the time, well, if I have a plan, my business, things change so much. And the reality is having a plan doesn't stop you from doing anything. Quite honestly, it's the opposite. It gives you better intelligence to make better decisions. So you have a plan, you have your goals for the year. If something else comes along, some other opportunity that you want to take advantage of, by having a plan, all it means is you go to your plan and say, if I do this new opportunity, which is going to take X resources of time and money, I won't be able to do this thing that's in my plan. Now, am I okay with that? Great. It doesn't mean, and maybe you can do everything, but most likely you can't. But you're making a smart business decision by having a plan and deviating from the plan with something that you think is going to, a much bigger opportunity for the company. But if you don't have a plan, which most don't, then you kind of just winging it. So,
right. So as a coach, I guess parsing that operational from the strategic in terms of what
correct.
You're looking at is key.
Yeah. Well, many of them are too busy working in the business to work on the business.
Right.
And to the earlier point of being over reliant on the owner, and it all kind of plays in together. They're too busy working in the business. That's the stuff they like to do most of the time. And it's doing the stuff on the business, i.e. sales, administrative stuff, finance, the stuff that they're not as comfortable with. So getting them more comfortable with that, the stuff they're not comfortable in, so that they can hire the team to be more in the business is a huge priority of mine and theirs. Many of them, they want to get out of the day-to-day, but they need help, and that's where I come in.
So you mentioned about hiring the team, and I know I'm no business coach, but just from my interactions with our business owner clients, I know that's a common complaint that I hear about is finding good people, and once you find them, bringing them on, and once you bring them on, how do you keep them? What say you on that?
Oh, well, that is talent. Employees are the bane of anybody's existence. They're the most important part of the business, and they're the hardest to manage. So finding them and keeping them is a big challenge for business owners. Now, COVID threw a huge monkey wrench into that. During COVID, most of my clients, they left money on their businesses. Actually, most of my clients weren't businesses that were shut down because of COVID. They actually did really well, and they would have done better. They left money on the table because there weren't enough available. They couldn't find enough people to hire. There was nobody. A lot of people seem to have left the workforce. Maybe the government gave them too much money. But many business owners don't even have a process for hiring people, and then they don't have a plan when they're keeping them. So, for example, having job descriptions that are written down, which clearly define what is the role of the person that you're bringing on. Many don't have company values, and company values are important because when you hire a new employee, ideally you want them to have the same values or share some of the same values as the company is. Because if they don't share the same values, they're not going to be a fit. And then you hire somebody, and many people, they hire somebody, they show up for the first day, and then they're basically on their own. They don't have an onboarding plan. And an onboarding planning isn't for the first day. The onboarding plan is for the first year. So what's happening that day? What's happening that week? What's happening that month? They don't have that kind of formality done. So those are the kind of tools that they need to have to hire appropriately and then keep books. Which, again, when you're a business owner with a zillion things going on, HR sometimes takes a back seat. And the reality is HR is an area where you can really get burned if you do stuff wrong. So you got to be really careful there.
Sure. So let's say that someone brings on a key member of the team that they're going to do important workload or that they're going to take on important responsibilities. What's a way that business owner can now, with the help of the people that they've brought in, sort of scale the business? What's your thought on that?
Well, I think if the business owner needs to hire somebody, what are they hiring for? And what I like to do with my clients is we look at what's called the org chart of the future. Say they're $1 million company now, they want to be a $3 million company in 5 years. So we work on what is the org chart needed for a $3 million company versus a $4 million company. And you do the org chart, you take the people you currently have, plug them into roles that exist, and then, okay, I need to hire the following people over the next 4 years to be able to handle the volume that I have. So when a business owner is hiring on a new person, what role does that person fill, and does it make sense with the org chart you have of the future? If you're hiring somebody that's not even on the org chart, then they either did a bad org chart of the future, or they're making a bad hire. So I always like to outline roles and responsibilities, and depending on what the need is for that hire. But if that hire can take some of the responsibility, ideally off of the business owner, to free up the business owner to be able to do other more important things the business owner needs to drive that business forward, that's a great hire. And that all goes down to what are the responsibilities of the business owner? What are things that if he or she had more time, what would he want to delegate to somebody else? And that's ideally the kind of roles they're bringing in, so that the new hires coming in are taking responsibilities off of the business owner, so the business owner can concentrate on the things that he or she needs to be concentrating on to take the business to the next level.
Makes sense when you say it like that. Not always easy to do from within the trenches, right?
Not at all. And that's the biggest challenge I have, to let them see. But many of them, they want to get out of the weeds, out of the trenches. They just need help getting out of it. And it goes back to planning and systems and processes, all those things that when you're in the trenches, most times you're not doing.
So let's move on, talk about another challenge that you see. I'm a little biased in the area of money, although Millstone River is not a lending firm, but I'm sensitive to the plight of this next one here.
Yeah, the next one is many business owners I come across don't know how to get, I said this earlier in answers to, one of the earlier challenges is most businesses when they launch are undercapitalized. They launched, they didn't have enough money. Many didn't do a business plan, so it wasn't really thought through in that depth. So many of them don't have enough money, and they need. I have a couple of clients now who they're at that stage where they need more money to grow the business. So a lot of them, they can go to a bank to get a loan. They can use a line of credit. I see many times the predatory short-term loans things that are like huge interest rates. That I see that and I'm like, stop, pay that off. That's the worst. So it's having and understanding financing. And the options that are out there. Many of them don't have a relationship with a banker, and obviously bankers not the only solution to get money, but they're a huge solution in the small business world, and many of them don't even have a relationship with their banker or haven't even tried. And that's partly the bankers. A lot of banks haven't done a really good job of kind of catering to business owners, but the business owners need to kind of have those relationships. They just, again, similar to lack of financial literacy, this is another area that's very similar where they don't know the options out there and haven't taken the time to actually think through them. Or research them.
And I suspect too that over the last 15 years or so that this has become a more complex topic because, we've seen the entry of private equity and private credit, lenders outside of the traditional bank lender or
Correct.
the small business administration type loan. And so because of the entry of other types of players in that space, it's even more important, I guess, for people to understand what options are available out there and to seek out some of these solutions.
Yeah, and the reality is for most small business owners, private equity is not an option. They might themselves think it's an option, but for most it's not. For most, it's not going to be an option for them, and you're giving up ownership of the company, which for most business owners that isn't even. They don't even. It's not even a road they want to go down, and they probably even shouldn't, depending on where they are and what their sophistication levels of with finance and everything else. So, it's just for most business owners, it starts with the bank. That's the easiest thing you can do. And there's also lots of, the state has lots of grants and opportunities there. And that is not an easy thing to try to navigate. But I'm trying to do myself a better job of understanding what are the opportunities out there, business owners from a statewide level to make my clients aware that they exist. But the biggest thing I do initially is who's your banker? You don't have a relationship you have a bank, but you make a relationship with your banker because they can help you. They have a lot of information, but you have to start with a relationship.
Yeah, good point. You mentioned something a few minutes back about everyone who owns a business will eventually exit that business, maybe voluntarily, maybe involuntarily. What do you see in terms of exit planning as a challenge for most people?
The challenge is that most people aren't even thinking about it. And there is for all the listeners out there, there was a really good book by an author called John Mousseau called Built to Sell. And I said this earlier, but every business owner is going to exit the business whether they want to or not. Ideally, they're exiting on their terms versus on some other terms. The other terms being business that goes out of business and or their health reason. I hear a lot. Oh, I'm in my early 40s. I have a long time to go, or I'm never going to leave the business. I'm going to work and then I'm going to take a step back. But the reality is they're going to exit at some point, and you need to plan for it. And you can't. There is not a. Just as you're in your early 40s now, 20 years of planning is start whenever you want. Start early. But the book is called Built to Sell. Highly recommend you take a look at it, because basically the premise of the book is that whether or not you want to sell the business or not, by acting like you are going to sell the business, you're going to do things for the business that are going to make it a better business to sell and to get more value for your business. Like number one, if the business is too reliant on the owner, many times it's not a sellable asset. You don't have any standard operating procedures written down. Understand your finances. It's all those things that good businesses do. So it's a really good book to get. It's a really short book, but a really good book to get you thinking, in the right way to exit the business. And most business owners, they don't even like approaching the topic because they think, I'm not ready to exit. There's nothing wrong. And they're going to exit at some point. So my job is to help them be prepared.
Great. That's a good tip. As we kind of head for home plate here, we have a couple more challenges, I'll bet, that you have in the holster. What comes to mind next?
Well, specifically, I'm in. We're both in New Jersey. So specifically, in New Jersey, the high taxes, the regulatory burden for a lot of industries. New Jersey is an expensive state to live as well as to own a business. So that, is that stopping people to become business owners? It's not. But I know a lot of my members at some point want to move to Florida at some point. So, but I think that's after they retire. Another more kind of current economic uncertainty is tariffs. That is playing a bigger role with the new administration and what impact. And I'm starting to see some impact from some of my clients on not necessarily the increased prices yet, but the uncertainty of what's going to happen. And that uncertainty can be paralyzing. And I'm starting to see some of that. And then the last opportunity here was that, with COVID, the working from home became a thing. And now a lot of the larger companies are trying to get people to get back in the office, and that's becoming a challenge. So I have some of my clients are completely remote. Some are completely in. There are some industries where you have to be in person, and some are hybrid. So that whole, managing that I think it's going to be an ongoing challenge going forward.
I've heard the acronym RTO, Return to Office, that people don't like. Sometimes a company sends out an email or some kind of memo and says, on such and such date, everybody is expected to be back in the office. And I've seen some companies through conversations with folks I talk with that's not so easy. In other words, sending out an email and saying, I want everybody back here starting Monday morning, 5 days a week or whatever the work schedule is. For whatever reason, I guess, as you said, it started during COVID, and people feel emboldened that they don't want to have to go back to the old work style. And I guess that depends a little bit on the industry you're in and the type of role that you play in that company, and even the leadership of the company and dictating, how you want to operate when there's a question there. But that is definitely a gray area. And I guess that's a to be determined. I mean, as we record this episode in February of 2025, the word tariff is on everybody's lips, and it's mentioned multiple times a day, and the uncertainty and the chaos around the conversation of tariffs. And then I think the other one, like you just said, is the work arrangement, whether it's in office, out of office, or some combination in between, what they're calling hybrid. And that is definitely a challenge. And I don't think the final chapter on either of those books has been written yet.
I think you're exactly right. I think there are going to be I think the last three, New Jersey taxes and regulations, and I think they're going to be around. We're probably more in the beginning than we are at the end for those. And for the hybrid work environment, I think that's going to be a constant. Where I see a lot of challenges, if a company has a field team who obviously cannot work from home, but they have office people who could work from home, how do you manage that in a fair way? Because people in the field are like, I can't do that. And I also think, I know Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase, he said, everybody's going to go back to the office. And, I heard him say on one of the channels the other day that realistically, it's going to be 3 days a week. Because the cat's out of the bag. I mean, it's like people have been doing it for 3 years, and to get people to go back 5 days a week, I think somebody can say what they want, but it's going to be a challenge because people now want that flexibility.
I would say, we just hired somebody who just started about 3 weeks ago in our firm, and the interviews that I did personally looking for that person, there was not an interview that I conducted in which that question wasn't asked. Do you expect me to be in the office 5 days a week? Now, my answer was yes, we do. And I think it's a lot easier to compel people to do that when you're just hiring from scratch. And if that's not for them, then the whole job isn't for them. But, we work in the office.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I can see that's going to be an ongoing challenge.
That's a challenge that big companies face because they, if you have good, you have good employees, you want to keep them. That flexibility is kind of it's going to be tough because employees want more flexibility. And if the company can do that in a way that it's a win-win for everybody, then they're going to win. But I have a feeling everybody's back in the office 5 days a week. This is going to be a short-term thing, but I think they're eventually going to lose people. And maybe they want to. Who knows?
Could be.
Maybe that's their strategy for wanting to really cut staff and making it out to be the employee's fault, not theirs. So
could be. Well, listen, John, you've shared an awful lot today. I hope that our listeners appreciate these things, and at least some, if not all, of the ideas that you shared today, I think are helpful. And I really genuinely thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, and I hope that you found lots of valuable insights to get you thinking. I don't think anyone would have all the answers after just this episode of our podcast, but I do think it should initiate conversation. Lots of things to think about, and maybe even things that you want to seek help on. If you're interested in talking further with John Mousseau, you can go to his website, tabjerseyshorenorth.com. And from there, you can see more about what he does and reach out to speak with him if you'd like.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Millstone River Live. Feel free to share it with someone you think might benefit. Millstone River Wealth Management is an independent wealth management firm based in New Jersey. We form a supportive partnership with our clients and help with financial education and planning. We welcome your feedback. Send comments or questions to podcast@millstone-river.com. More information about our firm can be found online at millstone-river.com. Thanks for listening.